Well, speaking of the Regional Development Authority, it's one of those alphabet agencies, but there's another one that is in, I don't even know what to call the situation. I guess they're almost on life support right now.
Yeah, it's in hospice.
Yes, Regional Bus Authority is in hospice right now unless something happens. It was a couple of years ago that you put the Hammond buses underneath the Regional Bus Authority. And if nothing happens by June 30th, they're going to severely constrict the bus service for people around the city of Hammond and around the entire area. What do you have to say about that?
It's a failure of government. It's an absolute failure of government. The RBA was created by the governor and the General Assembly, and its intended purpose was to consolidate buses, like Hammond Transit, East Chicago Transit, Gary Transit, was supposed to consolidate services and combine it into the RBA. And eventually there was going to be one seamless regional bus transportation system. That was the vision of Governor Daniels. And, you know, they created the RBA at the same time they created the RDA, and it was a good idea. Both of them. The RDA was a great idea. RBA was a great idea. I bought into it. I consolidated Hammond Transit into the RBA like we were being asked to, and gave them $900,000 or $950,000 for 2 years. And at that point, there was supposed to be a permanent funding source, and buses would continue on with the RBA into perpetuity. And we did what we were supposed to do. Gary Transit didn't transfer their operations. East Chicago Transit didn't transfer their operations. The funding source never materialized, and here we are. Now I own no buses. I have no drivers. I have no employees. I have no contracts with drivers. Obviously, everybody's in a money pinch, and the RBA is a total abysmal failure. By the way, it hasn't been a failure. It's a failure because it has a lack of a permanent funding source. So basically...
Are you happy with the operations?
Yeah, absolutely. The RBA itself is doing a great job when the buses are running, which right now they're running. Ridership is up. Complaints are down. They've done a wonderful job. I think Tim Brown and the RBA has done a wonderful job. The drivers, the customers are happy. The problem is there's no funding source for it. You know, when you create an agency like the governor and the General Assembly did, and you don't give it a funding source, it's sort of a joke. You know, why would you do this? Why would you create a regional bus system with no funding source? It makes no sense. But we're sort of, you know.
Well, there are a lot of your residents who take the bus. I mean, it's not throngs of people, but
right.
All you got to do is go over here by Walmart, and you see that a lot of people are getting around on the bus. So, I mean, there's thousands of people that in Hammond that are going to be affected by this.
True.
And I mean, what are they? I mean, what are the options at this point? Do you think there's any possibility that there might be money that comes forward?
The fact is, if you had a Democratic governor, we wouldn't be going through this right now. That's fact. Absolutely. Okay? I mean, the fact is, and I like the RDA. They've been good to us. The fact is, the RDA could fund buses. They could. They chose not to. They chose not to fund operations. And that's a decision they made. They could legally do it. And they have plenty of money, by the way. So buses don't have to shut down. The RDA is charged with regional busing. That's one of their responsibilities. And they chose not to fund operations. And so could the RDA step up and save buses? Yes, they could.
498451100. That's a phone number here. Let's move on to Claudia on line 3. Hey, Claudia.
Hey, Claudia.
Hello, how are you?
Thanks for calling.
Hello, Mayor and Jim. It's not necessarily a question, but I just wanted to say that I am, my family and I are frequent users of the bus services through the RBA.
I know you, Claudia. Don't I?
I know you do. And I think
you're wonderful. You spoke at our disability breakfast, right?
Yeah.
Great job. I still remember that speech.
Or I'm still around, but I just think it's a shame that, you know, in my own example, I just started a new job, and I don't know what's going to happen after June 30th. And I know that there's a lot of other people in our situation that depend on the services for every day, you know, getting to work, getting to school, getting everywhere they need to go.
Claudia, do me a favor.
Yes.
Because you're a really good representative for the group that takes the buses, okay? Could you go to our RDA meeting and explain your situation to them?
Yes.
Those meetings, I know it's maybe hard to get there, and maybe we could work on getting you out there, and I know that you have a job, so if you can go to an RDA meeting and explain your situation, because you made an impact on me when you gave a speech that you're at disability breakfast, and people need to hear from people like yourself, Claudia.
Good morning.
Hey, George.
Hi. Mayor, when you said that, did I hear you say RDA or RBA had the money?
RDA.
As in David.
RDA, Regional Development Authority.
The reason I bring it up is I was out at the county council meeting yesterday, and Tim Brown and EasyGo made its pitch for about for a truncated version of funding amounting to $12 to $14 million, and nobody mentioned that they came almost like paupers, hat in hand. And naturally, the consensus was on the council that you're talking a tax of some kind to fund this thing.
Right.
But nobody ever mentioned that this money that you just did, because that would have tilted that discussion, because it was a very lively discussion.
Well, George, I know things about the RDA because I was in the General Assembly, I wasn't a member, but I was lobbying while the RDA was being created. And I remind people of this constantly. The RDA was floated, a version was floated early in that session. I forgot the year, I think it was like 06 or something. The RDA initially was floated to fund the airport and the railroad, the expansion of the South Shore, and it was abysmal failure. It got no traction at all. And they went back to the drawing board and they came up with a couple other projects to add to it. They added the Marquette Greenway, and they added the buses, the Regional Bus Authority, and they also added the last one, the Unidentified Economic Development Project that everybody thought was Dean White's convention center to be built in Maryville. Okay? And then they floated the new version of the RDA in that session, and it passed. So I always say, guys, your version wasn't going to pass. The original version of the RDA was not going to pass until buses were added. And once buses were added, then it passed. And at the time, we were being told, us mayors were being told, this is going to save you money. Because if we assume the bus operations in the RDA, you're going to save $1 million a year, Mayor McDermott. So you give $3.5 million to the RDA every year, and you save $1 million, which save, in effect, you're only giving $2.5 million. And that is 100% fact.
Well, during yesterday's discussion, there was the major contrast was a regional approach the best alternative, as opposed to somehow creating a linkage between local bus lines, be it Gary, Hammond, everybody do their own thing and ensure their people get around in their own little, in their own city and town, and then somehow find some linkage between them, as opposed to, and the EasyGo, Tim Brown, those guys are arguing for this tri-county regional approach, and that one, I don't know, but I'm saying they didn't mention that source that you just mentioned, I guarantee you.
Well, nobody wants to say this because the RDA doesn't want to accept this responsibility because it's expensive to run buses.
Well, true enough, they were talking for the tri-county 20 mil. And, the point is...
I'm not worried about Tri-County. I'm worried about Lake County. I'm not worried. No offense. Porter County's doing just fine in LaPorte. I don't even know if they need buses in LaPorte. Let me tell you, right here in Lake County, we need them, okay? And everybody's shirking their responsibility. In fact, I'm going to go so far as to say, George, City of Hammond did what we were supposed to do.
Oh, yeah.
We're the only ones that did the right thing, and we're going to be the first ones to get screwed, okay? Yeah. And we did the right thing. Thank you, Governor Mitch, for a great idea. The RBA, you funded a bus service with no funding.